A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
For the 4 cups of the Seder night and for Kiddush all year round, what kind of wine may be used?
This sugya, this discussion, appears in the Talmud Bavli, in Masechet Bava Batra Daf Sadi Zayin, 97a and b. But rather than go into all the details of the sugya, I would like to read the Rambam's brief summary of the matter. Rambam writes in Lilchot Shabbat, Perek Kafteth, chapter 29, Halacha Yod Daled 14, En mekadeshin ela al hayayin hara'ui lenasech al gabei hamizbeach. Kiddush can only be made, and this is also true for the 4 cups of the Leil Seder, the first of which, of course, is Kiddush. The first cup of the 4 cups is the cup on which we say Kiddush. Rambam says that we cannot say Kiddush on wine that is not fit to be used on the Mizbeach, in the Mikdash, on the altar in the temple. This is based on the sugya that we mentioned in Masechet Bava Batra. Lefichach, im nit'arev bo devash o se'or, therefore, if in this wine there is an admixture of honey or some leavened product, yeast, etc., afilu ketipat hardal, even the tiniest amount, behavith gedola, in a whole barrel of wine, and mekadoshim alo, such wine cannot be used for Kiddush. The Rambam continues, Kach anu morim v'chol ha'ma'arav. This is the way we are posek the halacha. This is the ruling that we give in all of the West. When the Rambam writes ma'arav in Hebrew, he's thinking in terms of the Arabic term maghrab, which means North Africa and also perhaps Spain. In Arabic, this is what the term means to this day. And the Rambam is explaining that this was the standard halachic view apparently in Spain, where he originally came from, where he originally studied Torah, and in North Africa, and apparently also in Egypt. V'yesh mi shematir lekadesh alo. There are those, however, says the Rambam, who disagree. The Rambam immediately here mentions another opinion, which indicates that the Rambam was not entirely adamant that the first view that he mentions, even though it seems that he himself leaned towards that opinion, it seems also that he was not adamant that this was the correct and the only opinion. And this is something the Rambam does not do frequently, that he mentions more than one view. And where he does so, it indicates that very often that he has not got an absolutely fixed view on the matter. He says, Yesh mi shematir lekadesh alo. There are those who do allow saying Kiddush on such wine which has honey, for example, mixed into it to sweeten it. And they explain, Lo ne'emar hayayin hara'ui lenasech al gabei hamizbeach. They explain the statement in the Gemara that the wine has to be fit for the Mizbeach, that it comes only to exclude Ela lehosi yain sherehora. This comes to exclude wine which has an unpleasant smell to it, even though it tastes all right. Or meghule, or that was left uncovered for an extended period. Or mevushal, or that it was cooked. Wine that was brought to a boil and cooked in some fashion. She'en mekadashim al ehad mehen. That only these wines, these types of wines, may not be used for Kiddush, but wine that has honey in it, etc., may be used. So says the Rambam, and he doesn't clearly and unequivocally state what his opinion is. Again, even though it seems that he leans towards the first opinion. The fact, however, is that a majority of the Rishonim do not agree with the more stringent opinion, the first opinion quoted by Rambam. A majority of the Rishonim say that which the Gemara states, that the only type of wine that is not considered permissible, that cannot be used for Kiddush, and therefore also for the 4 cups of Leil Seder, is the wine referred to in the Gemara explicitly, mentioned explicitly in the sugya, in the discussion in Masechet Bava Batra that we mentioned, Daf Sadi Zayin, page 97, referring there to wine which has an unpleasant smell, or that which was allowed to remain uncovered for an extended period. These wines were considered to be unfit for Kiddush. The discussion in the Talmud there does not mention anything else, does not mention wine that, for instance, had some spices or honey, etc., added to it. This is not mentioned there. This was based on the assumption of certain Chachamim, apparently in Spain and North Africa, who, knowing that, according to the Torah, nothing with honey or any leavened product may be brought to the Mizbeach, to the altar in the Mikdash, therefore they reached the conclusion that wine which contains some honey may not be used for Kiddush. But the fact is, the Talmud does not make such a statement. On the other hand, the Talmud Yerushalmi explicitly states the opposite. And I wish to quote from the Talmud Yerushalmi. This appears in Masechet Pesachim Perek Yod, near the beginning. It also appears in Masechet Shekalim. The Talmud Yerushalmi asks, Mahu laseth bekonditon. Is it permissible for the purpose of the arba kosoth, the 4 cups of Leil Seder, to use yen konditon? Yen konditon refers precisely to what we mentioned a moment ago, wine which has in it honey and spices in order to flavor it. And the answer of the Gemara given is min ma dethane var kapara, from that which was taught in the name of bar kapara, konditon keyain. Konditon is considered wine for all purposes. Hava amara, we understand therefore from this means, in other words, yoseim bekonditon, that one can be yoseh dehova, one performs the miswah of arba kosoth and therefore also of Kiddush, because as we said, the first of the arba kosoth is Kiddush, with yen konditon. So we see explicitly that the Talmud Yerushalmi allows us to use wine which has had honey and other flavorings, other spices added to it, and this is not in accordance therefore with the first view mentioned by Rambam. This contradicts that view quite explicitly. And this fact is mentioned by a number of Rishonim, including the Ra'avad and the Bal-Ha'itur and the Rosh and many other, the Ran and many other Rishonim. The Yerushalmi continues and says, Mahu laseth behen mezuchim. Is it possible to, for the purpose of the arba kosoth, to use wine which has been diluted with water? Min ma dethane Rabbi Hiya, from that which was taught by Rabbi Hiya, he said, Arba'a kosoth sha'amaru yosim bahem ben hayim ben mezuchim. One may drink the wine of the 4 cups either straight, undiluted, or diluted with water, on the condition, as long as it still has the taste and the look of wine to it. We're talking here about red wine, and therefore, as long as the dilution is not such that it ceases to have the look, the appearance of wine, and it ceases to have the taste of wine to it, then it is considered perfectly acceptable. This also, the question of the color of the wine is also mentioned here in the Yerushalmi. It says, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Miswa laseth b'yayin adom. It is preferable to use red wine as opposed to white wine for the arba kosoth, and this would also follow that this is true for Kiddush all year round. Shnei Emar, it says in Sefer Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs, Al ter yayin ki ith adam. Do not be too much taken with wine because of its beautiful reddish color. So we see that the pasuk, the verse, praises wine for its color. So we see that the most desirable type of wine has a reddish hue to it. Furthermore, the Yerushalmi continues, Taneh mevushal, mahu laseh b'yayin mevushal. Is it permissible to use wine that has been brought to a boil and cooked? Rabbi Yonah Amar, Yosim beyayin mevushal. Rabbi Yonah says explicitly one may be yotzeh dehova, one may perform the miswah of arba kosoth and Kiddush with yayin mevushal. This too contradicts the view of Rambam and a few other Rishonim, that wine which has been cooked is not permissible for Kiddush and for arba kosoth. Here the Yerushalmi states the opposite quite explicitly. Furthermore, we have the explicit statement in the Talmud, in the place mentioned before, in Bava Batra Daf Sadi Zayin, that a person may take grapes and crush them and make from those grapes fresh grape juice and say Kiddush on that grape juice. This is also considered perfectly acceptable for Kiddush all year round, and of course also for the arba kosoth. And about this there is no machloka, there is no discussion, no argument whatever. So in fact, seeing that the Talmud Yerushalmi is absolutely explicit and unequivocal that all types of wine, whether they are flavored, sweetened wines, or wine that is diluted with water, which was a common practice in ancient times. Today it is less well known, but even if it is diluted, that's perfectly fine. In fact, the Rambam says explicitly regarding the Abar Kosoth, and I'll read in a moment from the Rambam, that this has to be the case, that one should drink the wine diluted with water. But this, again, was based on the custom in those days not to drink wine without diluting it, at least to some extent, with water. At any rate, we see that wine that is flavored with honey and spices or other flavorings, wine that is diluted, and wine that has been cooked, all these types of wine are considered perfectly permissible and acceptable for Kiddush all year round and for Abar Kosoth of Lela Seder. This is the opinion of the vast, also the opinion, apart from the fact that Talmud Yerushalmi states this explicitly, this is the opinion of the vast majority of the Rishonim. And it seems quite plain that the few authorities amongst the Rishonim who claimed otherwise were not sufficiently familiar with the Talmud Yerushalmi and did not see what the Talmud Yerushalmi says about this matter, because it is hard to imagine that were they aware of the fact that Talmud Yerushalmi explicitly permits this, it is hard to imagine that they would have said something to the opposite effect. So in practice one can use all manner of wines or grape juice, sparkling wines, flavored wines, etc. All types of wine that a person likes to drink are permissible, and in fact it is a good idea to drink a wine which a person finds desirable and tasty and pleasant. With reference to the Abar Kosoth of Lela Seder, Rambam writes in the 7th chapter of Yichot Hames U'Masa Harachat Teth, he writes, Arba'a Kosoth ha'elu tzarich limzog otam. They have to be mixed with water. As we explained, this was the normal way of drinking wine in the ancient world. Kedei shetiyeh shetiyah areva, because it was only then, when it was diluted with water, that the wine was considered truly desirable and pleasurable. Hakol lefi haya, and it all depends on the wine, in other words, its strength and its flavor, or lefi da'at hashoteh, and the way that a person wishes to drink his wine. Not all people have to agree as to how much water you add to the wine, but it was common and universal, in fact, to add water to the wine that one drank. Rambam says, some disagree, but Rambam says that the minimal amount for the Abar Kosoth has to be 1 revi'ith of undiluted wine, which then you can to which you can then add water, and according to the Talmud in a number of places, you can add as much as 3 parts water to 1 part wine, and therefore you would have 25% wine and 75% water, and that mixture is called yain mazur, that is considered called diluted wine, and that is, on that one says borei pri hagafen, definitely, and that is perfectly acceptable for all miswoth, such as Kiddush, Arbat HaKosot, etc. Some understand that the total amount of each of these cups, when diluted, has to be a revi'ith, but Rambam states that the wine itself, before it is diluted, has to be a revi'ith, which then comes, when it is diluted, it becomes a larger quantity, obviously. Rambam adds, Shatha arba chosot elu miyain sheno mazur. If a person drank these 4 cups on Lela Seder, wine that was not diluted, yasa yadeh arba kosot, he has performed the miswah of the 4 cups, v'lo yasa yadeh heruth, but he did not do so in the ideal fashion. He did not drink wine that is considered the most pleasurable and the most important and impressive type of wine. This was true, again, in ancient times. Nowadays, most people are entirely unfamiliar with the practice of diluting wine with water. And today, for most people, the opposite is true. Today, undiluted wine is considered the more respectable, more important product and the more desirable product. So, again, in summation, all kinds of wine or grape juice may be used. There is a preference for red wine or grape juice as opposed to white wine or grape juice. Rosé wine or grape juice, by the way, is also considered red. And any type of wine is acceptable as long as the bracha for that wine is borei pri hagafen.
What is the volume of a revi'ith of wine?
A revi'ith of any liquid is approximately 80 cc. On another occasion I will explain more in detail how we know this to be the case, but to make this simple for most people without having to measure, a standard disposable plastic cup, the type of plastic cup that one finds at water fountains and water coolers and the like, contains 180 cc. 80 cc is therefore a little bit less than a half of one of those plastic cups. That is a revi'ith for all purposes.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.